Look at the beard.
Right?
Oh my goodness,
Annie.
Sean Jones.
Hi guys.
How are you?
all?
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Happy New
Christmas.
Year's. How's everybody? Sorry, I'm in my bed. It's like the only place that's quiet enough for me to like be able to do this because I'm at my brother's house. So
Oh, it was good. Mine was quiet. Quiet, chill. I'm tired.
yeah. My brother was like, "What do you want to do today?" I was like, "Absolutely fucking nothing.
I'm not
I
doing
want to
shit."
do nothing. I want to do
I'm
nothing."
gonna bake today banana bread and then freeze it and then give it to my grandpa
Oh,
so that he
Grandpa.
can praise me. He hates Trump, so I'll bake him whatever he
So
wants.
he deserves it. He's earned that banana bread.
Yep. Fuck my other Trump-loving family. I mean, what? Last recording, huh?
Last
Last recording.
Yeah. It was fun while it lasted.
It was fun.
Hey guys, welcome to Insomniacs, the podcast where we talk about all things true crime, supernatural, and mysterious. I'm Shar.
And I'm Ashley, and these are the spooky stories that keep us up at night. I'm excited about this episode, but
Me too.
while I was researching it before I got started, I calculated it, and we first started talking about this podcast as a possible idea on June 5th, 2023. That was 573
Really?
days ago from
Wow.
today, the day that we're recording it.
We're about to be in
And-
2025, and we
Yeah.
were talking about it in 2023.
Yep, June 5th, 2023.
Amazing.
And that will be 581 days from when this episode releases.
That's at least we got there, you know.
581 days we've been working on this podcast. That is 18, almost 19 months or 82 weeks.
That's a long time when you put it like that.
Yeah. So that's 18 months of us learning how to even make a podcast because Lord knows we knew nothing.
Trial and error. Trial
going
and
into
error.
this. Sean, thank you so much for helping us with the editing and like the recording and the tech issues and like honestly
Being a part of this episode.
being a part of our last
course.
episode.
Hi everyone. Yeah. No, it's been super fun. Thanks for
You've
letting me do this
been
with you
a
guys.
lifesaver for it, for sure. Honestly, thank God that Sean stepped up. How the heck people got their episodes on like Spotify, I had no idea. Just thought it was magic.
Magic.
Do we email Spotify and say, hey guys, we have a podcast. Do you want to hear it? We had no idea.
It's been so much fun.
Yeah. It's been a great time. To be honest, I thought that you were crazy when you were like, we should do this, Ashley. We should start a podcast. My anxiety was like, me? Do that? Record? Have strangers on the internet listen to my voice? I don't think so.
Why not?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And Shar was exactly yeah, let's do it. All I have to say is like I've had so much fun creating this podcast. It has been a great time this past year and a half. So we've been talking a lot about where we want to go in 2025 and kind of talking about some ideas and what we want to do in 2025 just on like personal life and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think we've decided that while recording this episode has been like so amazing and fun and a fantastic experience, we're going to take a step back in 2025 and make some room in our lives for some other projects and hobbies.
Yes, I agree. I know it was my idea and you guys jumped on board with it. And I'm like, I feel like I'm bailing. But life has been so busy lately, I think, for all of us.
Right.
And we do want to kind of step into other hobbies. I know Ashley's in the works for maybe doing a different podcast situation, which I really hope she does because I want to listen. I hope so. I'm hoping. I want to listen to a book talk podcast.
Well, we'll see if there's even a book talk after.
Oh yeah, we don't know what's happening with TikTok. Yeah. So true. So unfortunately, I mean, we don't want to say that our podcast is forever going to be done.
This isn't necessarily goodbye.
Nothing's ever set in stone. That's my philosophy on life. but we're just going to take a step back for a bit, and we might be back in the future, possibly. Just to kind of
Kinda see
depends
you
on where
later
life is going.
kinda deal.
I got a new job.
Yeah.
I moved, I got a new job, I got a new car. My life is just completely just and made a left turn. Just like I kind of can't keep up with it. And so it's just been really busy. And I don't know what my life is going to look like in the next 6 months while I'm on probation on this journey.
Yeah.
So yeah, I maybe in the future we can go to less episodes, or maybe we won't record anymore. I don't know. We'll see what life has in store.
But I think at the end of the day, the podcast has really done exactly what we wanted it to do. Like, it gave us a really great, fun, creative outlet for topics that are interesting to us.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's gone a long way in building my confidence, which has been
Oh,
really
yay.
cool, and just like trying new things and stuff.
Yeah.
And I know we're just both really grateful for everyone that's come
Yes,
along on the ride with
absolutely.
us. And
Thanks for listening,
so,
you guys.
yeah,
It's been
the fact that strangers
amazing.
listen to us on the internet is a crazy, mind-boggling thing.
Yeah.
And we've just had a fantastic time. And so with that, we wanted to leave you guys with one last doozy of a tale. I kind of wanted to bring things full circle. So we started season 2 with you covering Jack the Ripper.
Yes.
We started this podcast just by covering a really intense true crime case. And so I just wanted to kind of bring it back to the roots. And so with that, let's go ahead and talk about H.H. Holmes and his murder castle.
Yeah, buddy. This is a doozy.
This is a doozy, and I'm really excited.
This story is crazy. If you don't know who H.H. Holmes is, go on Netflix right this second and watch all the documentaries on him, because he is a character. He is a con man.
Yes.
Is he debatable like as the first con man in America? I don't know.
There's a lot. There's like definitely a con man. He was definitely a serial killer. There's a lot of things where you see like America's first serial killer type of thing.
You do
so
see
I feel
that,
like a few people get that moniker, like this place's first serial killer.
Yeah.
But it is a very old-timey case. So H.H. Holmes was actually, that's not his real name. He was actually born Herman Webster Mudgett. I would change my name too.
Yeah.
My name was Mudgett.
That's not a very cool name.
Definitely doesn't sound like a super scary
Mudgett?
killer.
I
Okay,
know.
Mudge.
Okay, Mudge. He sounds like he was bullied in school.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? So he was born May 16th, 1861 in Gilmanton, New Hampshire, which is my neck of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
His parents were Levi Horton Mudgett and Theodate Page Price. His father was a farmer and a house painter, and he was raised in a devout Methodist family. Honestly, he was raised in kind of a normal family.
Yeah.
Pretty average.
Yeah.
He was reported to be a pretty smart kid, but mostly kept to himself, kind of shy, pretty introverted. There are some accounts, it's really funny that you said that, because there are some accounts that he was bullied when he was
with
a
a name
kid.
like that, I would bully him too. No, I'm kidding. I was not bullied when I was not bullied, and I was not a bully. So not. But I'm not surprised.
So
because wasn't he cross-eyed?
Maybe I didn't read that, but he might have been cross-eyed.
Oh, anyway,
I didn't see. But you know what? With a name like Mudgett, it sounds like he would be cross-eyed.
I think he was semi-cross-eyed. I think I remember that. Anyway, go ahead.
So there are some accounts that he may have been bullied, although other people say that those accounts may have been fabricated by Holmes himself as a way to like give himself this tragic backstory. Again, he was a serial killer, but at his root, he really was just a con man. Like that was always his main MO, was to con.
So, yes, H.H. Holmes was described as having one eye that was not straight.
He had a lazy eye.
He did. I don't know if that's why he was bullied. Anyway, I was like, I'm pretty sure I've heard that somewhere. Anyway, go ahead.
Char's fun fact, because that's completely fucking random.
He was cross-eyed.
He was cross-eyed. He had a lazy eye. One such bullying incident, if it really happened, because there are some people who say that did, some people who say it didn't, but if it did happen, it may have played a role in who he became as an adult. So according to these popular accounts, Holmes was terrified of the local doctor's office. He hated it because they had like full-size human skeletons in the office. He didn't like it. He was not a fan.
Yeah.
His classmates found out about the sphere, and the story changes depending on what type of report. Some reports say this took place in the doctor's office. Other reports say this took place at school. But regardless, the kids found out about the sphere that he had. They cornered him one day, dragged him either inside the closed doctor's office or
Oh.
into a room at school, and shoved him in front of the human skeleton that was there.
So he's traumatized.
Yeah, so he was like shoved into the skeleton, and
Oh.
then in some versions they pushed him in there and then locked him in. And so he
Oh.
like got locked in this room, like shoved into and like entangled in this skeleton, like fell over on him and stuff. It getting tangled up in it, his
Oh.
classmates like locking him in the room and leaving him there.
Trauma.
Yeah. So some like reports say that happened, other reports say that he probably made it up. I always read that's something that happened to him as a kid.
I believe it.
And I believe it. It makes sense
Uh-huh.
when you find out where he went as
Yeah.
a grown up.
Yeah.
But instead of deepening his fear, his classmates maybe did him a little bit of a service, because the experience allegedly sparked his lifelong obsession with anatomy, dissection, and death.
I was gonna say, wouldn't that have just like triggered something for him? Maybe.
Yeah.
It makes
And
sense.
it did. It sure did.
Yeah.
Because according to Holmes himself, he felt an unexpected sense of calm and curiosity during this incident, and it led him to pursue medicine and anatomy later on as a career.
Sorry. So this just reminds me of an ex-boyfriend from high school who was like that. I mean, he wasn't a murderer. Sean's
you
looking
know
at me
of.
like, what?
I was like, bro. So I'm just gonna like lead with this. We'll see how this
We've been
lands.
working on this podcast for 581 days, and you didn't tell us about your
You
murder.
didn't tell us about your
I didn't date a
boyfriend?
murderer.
Yeah.
No, he liked that kind of stuff. He wanted to be a mortician. It didn't bother him, like dead bodies or skeletons. Like he liked that. He was a goth guy, obviously. He never went to school or anything like that. As far as I know, he stayed in his hometown, got married to an old girlfriend, and had kids. I don't know what he does with his life or if he finished school. I mean, he wasn't a murderer as far as I know, but he was someone who was interested in that. It didn't bother him.
Sometimes you just are like, and there's nothing wrong with
There's
that being
not.
an interest,
as long as you're not killing
as long
people.
as that's where your interest stops.
Yeah.
For Holmes, it did not stop there.
Yeah.
Right? We go from interest to Dexter real fast. You
Real
know?
fast. Real fast. There have been reports that after this encounter, when Holmes started becoming more interested in anatomy, he started trapping animals and performing surgeries on them.
Oh, that's
Yeah. So we have the cruelty to animals part of the triad, serial killer triad. So that's great. There are some accounts that he may have killed a childhood playmate, like a neighbor or a classmate or someone, like another kid.
Yeah.
I could not find any details on that besides just articles that said that there are some accounts that may have happened. I can't find those accounts. And so that might just be a rumor that was spread. But regardless, it's unsettling enough that there are accounts that he may have killed.
Yeah.
Like a childhood
I vaguely
playmate,
remember this.
classmate person. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't find any more information on that, but it's the rumor is there. So he went on to marry his first wife, Clara Lovering, in 1878 when he was 17 years old.
Oh, that's young.
Yep. They had one son who was born in 1880. So a year and a half, 2 years after they were married-ish.
Okay. So they waited.
Yeah. Also, the year after, so they got married in 1878. In 1879, Holmes enrolled at the University of Vermont, but left after 1 year and transferred to the University of Michigan's Department of Medicine and Surgery.
Just like that.
Yeah, just like that. It was much easier to become a doctor in the 1800s.
When you're a man. You just walk into a place and you're like, I'd like to be a doctor, please.
I would like to be a doctor, please.
They just let you
be
be.
Like, well, dentists and doctors are the same thing. So you're going to be a dentist / doctor / stonemason because you have to learn how to do drills. I don't know. It was a weird time. It was a weird time to pick your career. Now, what do you know about the four humors of the body and ghost blood?
Yeah. Times were crazy back then.
Mhm, mhm. He transferred to the University of Michigan's Department of Medicine and Surgery. Obviously, that means him and his wife, they relocated to Michigan from Vermont. Um, he was described as being competent, but unremarkable when he was in school. Like, he was
You're
okay. Like, he
boring.
did enough to
Mm.
pass. He wasn't exceptional. He wasn't super
Oh,
smart.
yeah.
He, like, wasn't an A student, but he did enough to get by. He did enough to pass. But yeah, literally just adequate, but not exceptional is how he was
Yeah.
described in multiple places as a student. It's like,
You're
oof.
just adequate.
Uh, he also, like, didn't have a lot of money during this time, and so this is probably where he started getting his idea for
How do you
cons.
pay for school?
Thank you so much for asking this
5
great question.
blueberries
Yes,
and a cow.
yes, exactly. No, I'll talk about how I'm gonna get into that in a second, but
Oh,
he didn't have
okay.
a lot of money. He needed to find a creative way to kind of help pay for medical school while he was also a husband and a young dad.
Yeah.
But regardless, like I was saying, academic-wise, he was okay. Most of his classmates viewed him as intelligent, but self-interested and secretive. There were no formal accusations of wrongdoing during his education, but he did keep to himself a lot, and he seemed overly interested in cadaver-related work.
That's a little weird.
Yes. That's a little
What a
weird. That's a little
weirdo.
suspicious.
Mhm. You
And
would.
so thank you for asking about how he paid, because this ties us into most likely what he did.
Yeah.
Because it's also during this time that Holmes started committing his first crimes. They weren't murders, but they were insurance fraud schemes.
Oh.
Hmm. So at the time, and like still now to a certain extent, but especially in the 1800s, medical school, like what you did at working through your classes was very much you practiced on cadavers. Like that was a bulk of your classwork. And that's how you went through medical school. It wasn't like textbooks and presentations and lectures, and it was dead bodies that you were practicing on. And so there was a whole market for cadavers at the time. And so the school would have to purchase these cadavers from reputable sources, and those cadavers would
Mhm.
then be used in the medical office. So a lot of times some things that he could do is he could like steal cadavers and sell
Grave
them to the
rob.
university. He could grave rob and sell those
Mhm.
cadavers. Yep. Another thing he could do is he could also steal the cadavers from the medical school, mutilate them or disfigure them in some way to make them unidentifiable, and then pass them off as someone else. And so then he would like stage fake accidents, so it would look like the person died in this accident, and then he would collect the
Wow.
insurance money. Yes. So,
Damn.
it was like this whole like, this is where he kinda got into, like, his cons here. Like,
Yeah.
he would, like, grave rob and steal bodies and sell them to the school, or he would steal bodies from the school and kind of stage these fake accidents to collect insurance
They
money.
didn't expect people to do that back then.
No. No,
It's
they most
very
assuredly did not.
No, they had a lot of trust in civilians' morals,
Yep.
right?
Who would desecrate a body?
No, that's
That's,
just
like,
so
we're
disrespectful.
God-fearing people. We
Yeah.
wouldn't do that. Some reports suggest that Holmes may have experimented on these corpses, which may have contributed to his later gruesome methods that we'll get into
Mm.
in a little bit. Now, his marriage to Clara was not a happy one. There are several accounts that describe him as becoming increasingly abusive towards her, because of course he was.
No way.
After graduating medical school, Holmes left Michigan, left New Hampshire, where they had moved back to pursue job opportunities elsewhere. He left Clara and their son behind. So he abandoned them
Bye,
and peaced
Felicia.
out. Yeah, bye, Felicia. So he pieced out. He's like, I need to find a job, and you're
On
not
your
doing it for
own.
me anymore. You're holding me back. So he left Clara
Damn.
and their son behind. When it was clear that he abandoned them, Clara moved back in with her parents. But Holmes and Clara, this is important, were never officially divorced. He
Oh,
abandoned
yeah.
her. They were never officially divorced. So they are still legally married. After abandoning his wife and son, he settles in Chicago in 1885, where he stopped using his birth name of Herman Webster Mudgett, Bear, and
Mhm.
started going by the alias Dr. Henry Howard Holmes.
Henry
H.H.
Howard
Holmes.
Holmes.
Mhm.
That sounds cooler.
it is during this time that he got himself a job at a pharmacy owned by Elizabeth Holton. He quickly became known as charismatic and a cunning person and ingratiated himself well into the community. He became very well liked and kind of like a member of the community at that time. However, working for the pharmacy, just being a run-of-the-mill average pharmacist wasn't cutting it for
Working?
him. It wasn't working for him. He wanted more out of life. And
Oh.
so, while there aren't a lot of details, he somehow managed to obtain ownership of Elizabeth's pharmacy.
Oh, yeah? Legally?
It depends on who you ask. Some
Oh.
people say that like he purchased it from them and they went off and lived their happy little lives
Oh,
with the money
okay.
they got. It is also claimed that Elizabeth Holton and her husband mysteriously disappeared after selling the drugstore to Holmes. So, this led to rumors that Holmes may have been involved in their deaths in order to obtain
Yeah.
that pharmacy.
That's where I'm leaning on that. Mhm.
Yeah. There's not necessarily any proof that anything nefarious happened to the Holtons. However, acquiring the pharmacy was a very strategic move on Holmes's part because it gave him access to resources and money that allowed him to fund his future ventures, which included the construction of his quote unquote castle.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, in 1887, Holmes marries Myrta Belknap of Minneapolis, committing bigamy since he, like I said, never divorced Clara.
Uh-huh.
They moved to Wilmette, Illinois, which is like a suburb outside of Chicago, and had one daughter. So now he has two wives, a son, and
And a
a
daughter.
daughter. Um, Obviously, the marriage to Myrta is not legal
Sister
because he never
wives.
divorced Clara, but yes. He then soon after the marriage, because Myrta was an heiress. She came from a wealthy family, so
She
convenient
checked off some
marriage.
boxes for
Checked off
him.
some boxes for him. He then soon acquires the land across the street from the pharmacy, and that's where he started building the
His
large
murder
3-story
house.
building on that lot. Yes, so this
Yes.
brings us officially to what would later become known as the Murder Castle.
The murder castle. It
Yes,
was big. I've
it was very
seen
big,
the schematics for that house.
very big. Yeah.
Very elaborate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Insane. So it started off as a 2-story multi-use building. The first floor contained different businesses, including an expanded pharmacy and drugstore. And then the second floor was comprised of apartments that he could rent out to
Mhm.
people, like rooms and apartments he could rent out. So between 1891 and 93, he expanded the building by adding a third floor. He claimed he was expanding the building ahead of Chicago's World Fair, which was
Oh,
held
yeah.
from May 1st to October 31st of 1893. Holmes stated that the expansion was to create a hotel or boarding house for those traveling to Chicago
And
from the
charge
World
them lots
Fair.
of money to stay
Charge them
there
lots
for
of
the World
money.
Fair because that was a
Yes.
big deal.
Yeah,
People were gonna
exactly.
be there at
It was a
that fair.
huge deal. It was
Mhm.
it was a huge deal. It was also really a big deal for Chicago because
Yeah.
Chicago had like the Great Chicago Fire, several years before, and they had, it spent the decades like rebuilding, and it was kind of to show that they were back
It's like
and
the
strong.
Olympics, how they build
Yeah.
a mini city in the world every 2 years or whatever, They say that they're gonna build in, I don't know, Paris in, like, 10 years from now, and then they get prepared to do that, and it brings a lot of money in
Yeah.
to Chicago by doing this World Fair.
Yeah. Well, so the first Ferris wheel, Ashley's fun fact. So
Yeah.
the first Ferris wheel was actually built for the
Oh,
1893 World
really?
Fair in Chicago. Yes. Get this,
Interesting.
okay? It was 264 feet tall.
Oh.
Capacity, it had 36 cars. Each car had 40 revolving chairs, and so the Ferris wheel could house 2,160 riders.
Wow, I didn't know it was huge like that.
It was ginormous. It cost 50 cents per ticket, and the ride was 20 minutes long, and nearly 1.5 million people rode the Ferris wheel.
Is it still there?
No, it was dismantled after the fair, rebuilt in
Oh.
Chicago, then dismantled again and sent to the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis, where it was blown up in 1906.
Oh.
Apparently,
Okay.
according to Google.
That escalated quickly.
Damn. It did.
That escalated very quickly. Why was it blown up?
Hold on, we need to Google this. Hold,
Why
please.
was the Chicago World Fair Ferris wheel blown up? Okay, so it was destroyed by dynamite in 1906 because it couldn't be relocated, and the contract with St. Louis required the park to be restored. There were no buyers who would relocate the wheel and who would be willing to pay for that. And so the contract with St. Louis required the restoration of Forest Park, where the wheel was located. So they needed to remove the Ferris wheel. It couldn't stay there. No one was willing to buy it. And so they blew it up with dynamite, and the wheel was sold for scrap.
Oh, no one wanted it.
No one wanted it. I guess there's
Okay.
not a big market for, a 300-foot tall
Ferris wheel?
but it was designed to rival the Eiffel Tower in Paris, which is kind of very cool.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Anyway, that's the Ferris wheel. It has nothing to do with our story, but anyway.
Wow, so curious.
that was I didn't realize that, but I'd read that when I was doing research, and just that Ferris wheel is crazy. Now, back to Holmes. His intention was never to create a safe hotel for travelers to stay.
What? What do
I
you
know, it's
mean?
shocking. I know. So first of all, he used this construction project as just a huge con. It was a huge way
He's an
to steal
opportunist.
money and get money. Yeah. So his intention was to turn the building into his own personal murder playground.
I'm sure you're gonna get into this. In order for this to be built, didn't he have to be kind of shady with the builders?
Super shady. Super
right?
shady. We'll get into.
So
Yeah.
that they wouldn't be suspicious of him.
Mhm.
Because some of these rooms, you're just like, what's that about?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Got it.
So the upper floors contained hidden passageways,
Yeah.
soundproof rooms, and trapdoors.
Yeah.
The basement was equipped with, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Acid vats, quicklime
God.
pits, a stretching rack, and a full-ass crematorium.
Oh my God. A normal hotel doesn't have that stuff.
But he could get away with it as being oh, that's doctory stuff. He's also a doctor, right?
Yeah.
I guess. So the murder castle was infamous for its labyrinthine design and concealed traps. So the extent of the traps built into this building are honestly terrifying.
Yeah.
It goes beyond acid vats and quicklime pits. Holmes created rooms that were allegedly soundproof, which would prevent screams from being heard by others in the building.
Honestly, that's kind of ingenious for his time.
Yep. Some rooms had false walls and secret doors leading to hidden compartments or concealed passageways. Hallways were reportedly designed to confuse victims with doors that led to nowhere or opened into solid brick walls. Certain rooms were airtight and equipped with gas jets, which would allow Holmes to asphyxiate his victims.
Crazy.
There were chutes connected directly to the basement, which would enable Holmes to dispose of bodies discreetly. He wouldn't have to carry the bodies through the hotel. He could just shove them down the laundry chute and it would go straight down to the basement where his
and he would just put them in the crematory.
Yeah. Like I said, the acid vats and the lime pits, those were they were allegedly down in the basement, and they would have been used to dissolve the remains, so you could just have the bones. Holmes also said that he used the basement for gruesome medical experiments and to strip flesh from the bones. So he had some dissection tables. There were also booby traps.
Really?
In this hotel. Straight up
surprised.
booby traps. Doors with hidden mechanisms. So many doors had locks that could be controlled remotely, which would trap victims inside. There were peepholes and spy chambers, so Holmes could observe his victims without their knowledge, possibly to savor their distress before killing them.
Oh, that's so twisted.
Yeah. And finally, like I said, the basement also had industrial-sized furnaces, which were believed to be used to cremate the bodies and destroy evidence. So, sure you're wondering at this point, Charlotte, you brought up, how in the ever-loving heck can you build a building like that and have nobody realize what they're doing or be suspicious?
I know he was shady because didn't he fire his crews often and rehire new people?
And fired numerous construction crews to prevent anyone from understanding the building's full layout.
This is weird. Huh.
Yeah. So we hired and fired. He also was very much known for like buying things on credit and then like
Oh,
selling them
swindling
for the
them.
money and then using that money to pay like the construction crews and then never paying the credit back and then like
Yeah.
then taking off before like items could get repossessed, things like that. He was
Oh,
very
yeah,
much
yeah,
so that was he was doing that too during this
yeah.
time,
Yeah.
during the construction. Would like not pay construction teams or he would buy furniture on credit and then not pay that credit back. And then so like there was a lot going there was a lot going on. He had a lot of moving
Yeah.
parts during this. Once constructed, Holmes would target young women by offering them jobs at his hotel or his pharmacy while requiring them to take out life insurance policies with him as the beneficiary.
Huh. That sounds normal.
Totally normal, girls. This is just a normal part of having a job. Any job that you
Mhm.
have will require your boss to be the beneficiary of your life
Of your
insurance. It's very
death.
normal. It's fine. Don't worry.
Mhm.
You're probably not going to die being a receptionist in a hotel, but it's just good to have life insurance.
Uh-huh. And they're
Mhm.
probably immigrants, and I don't know if they were
Not
immigrants or
necessarily,
not.
not necessarily immigrants, but a
Women
lot of them are
who
like single women. They're
want
traveling through the
jobs,
city. They don't really
not
have their families
married.
with them. Yeah. So these women would just quietly and mysteriously disappear. Holmes would often say that they quit or they moved back home or they were only passing through for the World Fair. He doesn't know where they went after this. Like he was
Becky just left in the middle of the night. I
pretty
don't
much.
know.
Yeah.
That, you know?
All the while, the victims were reportedly being murdered through asphyxiation, starvation, hanging, or dismemberment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are some accounts that say that Holmes would sell the organs and the skeletons to
Oh,
medical
yeah.
school, further profiting from the bodies of these victims. So it was like a
I found
whole
this. Do you
scheme.
want it?
Yeah. It was like this whole scheme where he had these businesses operating that seemed legitimate. He would get these young girls to be employees. He would have become the beneficiaries of their life insurance. They would disappear mysteriously
Yep.
or die under mysterious circumstances. He'd get their insurance policies. Then he'd take their bodies. He would sell the organs. He would remove the flesh. He would disarticulate the skeletons, and then he would sell the skeletons to medical universities. So he's
And
getting cash upon cash upon cash.
and these
For
women's they might not even have family looking for them. So
yeah,
who's gonna ask questions?
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about who some of the most well-known victims are. These are the ones that we are pretty sure are were victims of Holmes. There are many more that he claimed he may have killed. The number of people he murdered varies drastically because he was so dishonest, and he
Yeah.
was very much like talked himself up. But Holmes used charm and cunning to lure his victims. So he frequently hired young women, like I said, to work at his pharmacy or his hotel, only to murder them once they were isolated from their friends and family. He also was known to seduce women. So he used several women using their trust to gain financial benefits or control over them. And finally, like I said, many victims were transient or they were estranged from their families or they're just passing through the area, which made it a lot easier for Holmes to cover up their disappearances. The first well known victims of this murder castle are most likely Julia and Pearl Connor. Julia was the wife of Ned Connor, who was a man who worked for Holmes at the pharmacy. Julia and her young daughter Pearl lived in the building with Ned, but after Julia allegedly began an affair with Holmes, Ned left her.
Mm-hmm.
So Ned took off, left Julia and Pearl with Holmes in Murder Castle. However, not long after that, Julia and Pearl reportedly disappeared around Christmas of 1891. How weird, how strange, how
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
suspicious, how convenient. Holmes
Yeah.
later admitted to murdering Julia during an abortion procedure, although it's unclear if this was true or just a cover-up story for a more sinister murder.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Pearl's fate remains unknown, but it's believed that he probably killed Pearl after killing her mom.
Yeah.
Pearl was a child, just I don't know her exact age, but she was a young child.
Yeah.
But most likely he killed Pearl after killing Julia. Then there was Emmeline Sigrand. Emmeline was a stenographer who worked for Holmes shortly after becoming engaged to Holmes in
Oh.
1892. So Holmes has two wives, two kids, and now he's engaged to Emmeline. Um, she went missing too in 1892.
Oh.
Very weird, very
They
strange.
had did
What
did she
a
have life insurance
what a
policy on her
coincidence. Most
too?
likely.
Oh.
She was an employee of his, and he had
Oh,
his
yeah.
employees take life insurance, so most likely. Witnesses claim to have seen her in Holmes's company shortly before her disappearance, and evidence suggests her body may have been disposed of in the castle's basement. So we don't really know what happened there, but got engaged, she worked there, and then she disappeared. We're pretty sure she met her end in that basement as well.
Mm-hmm.
There is also Minnie and Nanny Williams. This is important. These are important ones. So Minnie Williams was a wealthy Texas heiress, and her sister Nanny visited her in Chicago. Holmes convinced Minnie to sign over her property in Texas to him. So she had a bunch of property in Texas, and Holmes somehow managed to convince her, like,
How?
hey, you should
Oh,
sign that over to
okay.
me. Okay, love. Like, they were like, okay,
So he
I love
loves
you.
me
I
so
trust you, baby.
much.
Yeah. Both sisters vanished in 1893, and it's believed that they were murdered in the castle. Holmes never confessed to their murders, but Minnie's property became a critical piece of evidence used against him later on. So keep Minnie Williams in mind and her
Yeah.
property in Texas. So this is all happening very, very quickly. So Holmes himself confessed to killing 27 people, although many have been unsubstantiated. Like, we can't confirm that number. A lot of them are unsubstantiated, but he
Mm-hmm.
confessed himself. He said that he killed 27 people. There are
Okay.
estimates, the contemporary estimates, that put that number anywhere from 9 people to as many as potentially 200 people.
Wow. I mean,
There's
that sounds more realistic.
right. There's not a lot of evidence to support that. So, like, modern estimates put that number somewhere around 10 as being a most likely number. But
Oh.
he confessed to 27. Could be as much as 200. We don't
I
really
feel like I
know.
would lose count.
Yeah, I know.
That's
Can
crazy.
you imagine murdering so many people? You're like, I lost track somewhere, in the 20s,
27 sounds like a
22,
good
23.
number.
Let me
I'm sure
just,
he's
like,
not writing a
carry
tally
the
somewhere.
3.
Math.
27-ish. Seems
Yeah.
good. By 1894, however, things did start to crumble around Holmes. So there's a lot of weird disappearances going on around him. He's hiring and firing these construction crews. He's not paying people. He's taking things out on credit and not paying it back. There's these insurance schemes going on.
Yeah.
Has a lot of balls up in the air, and some of them are he's not juggling them as very well. The first thing to realize is that Holmes was a con artist as much as he was a murderer. So he, like I said, engaged in numerous fraudulent schemes,
Mm-hmm.
including insurance fraud, unpaid debts, and litigation. Like, there were actually lawsuits out against him.
Yeah.
He, like I said, consistently borrowed money or purchased goods on credit, then failed to pay the creditors. And so by 1894, many of his creditors began suing him, and he faced constant legal pressure. So this financial strain from his unpaid debts and the legal actions against him made staying in Chicago increasingly difficult. He was like, there's too much heat on me.
Yeah.
And so on top of that, while his murders were not yet widely known, people were starting to become suspicious that so many people were disappearing around
Yeah.
Holmes. It was getting a little weird.
If
Weird.
so many people were disappearing, now they're being
So many people.
suspicious.
And he was getting the insurance for all of them. Like,
Yeah.
that's not normal.
Oh, another insurance claim by H. Holmes. Huh.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, another one. And another one.
And another one, and another one. And so reports of Holmes's unusual construction projects and his erratic dealings at the castle began to attract attention. And finally, insurance companies and local authorities started investigating Holmes for his fraudulent claims. And in late 1893, early 1894, there was a mysterious fire at the castle.
Huh.
Yeah.
Not set by Holmes to get insurance money?
Assuredly not. He would never.
No.
He would never do that. How could you suggest such a thing?
Such a moral man would
Right?
never.
Oh. It was probably intentionally set by Holmes to destroy
Yeah,
evidence
to
and
get the
avoid
money.
financial scrutiny. Yeah. The event likely increased suspicion. However, it didn't do him any favors, because they're like, oh, that's weird. Now the house that we're, suspicious of now just burnt to the ground. You're trying to collect insurance on that.
Uh-huh.
So it just brought more suspicion to him and contributed to his decision to leave the city. He was like, I'm out. And so Holmes flees Chicago, abandoning his second family.
Because they were just objects. They weren't, he didn't care about them.
Yep.
But when he was also murdering people in his murder castle, wasn't he like taking whatever wallets or money they had on them too, as well as,
Probably.
or like from the guests, you know what I mean? Like if wasn't he like robbing them as well and taking whatever money
He
they
was
had on
probably
them?
robbing them. Yeah, he would rob them from anything that he could get. Yeah.
Yeah. That was
Any
his
way he
way
could
of
get
making
money. So
money.
he was robbing them. He was selling their bodies, their organs, their bones. Like he was getting insurance from them. He was basically getting as much money from each victim as he could in as many different ways as he could.
Mm-hmm.
So after the hotel burns down, he flees Chicago. He abandons his second family and he goes to Fort Worth, Texas.
Oh,
Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
remember the property I mentioned?
Yeah, I do.
So that the one that he managed to swindle from Minnie Williams. Holmes made plans to start building a new murder castle on this property. He was like,
Oh,
well, Murder Castle 2.0, here I come, baby.
Texas. Yeah, we do it bigger and better here.
However, local authorities and creditors began scrutinizing him before he could complete any significant construction. They were like, we've heard some things about you. Let's look into you a little
In
bit.
Texas?
Yeah.
Oh.
So they started like looking into him a little bit and they were like, no, this guy's no good. And so because of that, he decides to fall back on his old hat trick of insurance scams. Because the state was like, we're not going to approve construction. Like we're not going to do that. So he was like, well, I can't build my murder castle. Oh, darn. But he decides to fall back on his old hat trick of insurance scams to fix his little financial issue. Cause he's strapped for cash. Like he needs some money and he needs it quick.
He's spending it quicker.
Yeah.
And
So this is where he partners with Benjamin Pitzel. Benjamin Pitzel, I'm gonna say.
Okay, that sounds fine.
Benjamin Pitzel in a life insurance scam. So Pitzel was a
this became his business partner.
Yeah. So Pitzel was a close associate of Holmes and also a con artist himself because birds of a feather stick together, you know? So he was a handyman and an occasional accomplice in Holmes's financial schemes, not murder schemes, but financial. So basically what happened is Holmes convinced Benjamin Pitzel to take out a $10,000 life insurance policy.
On himself?
On himself in the 1890s. That's a lot of money. So he convinces Ben to take out a $10,000 life insurance policy with Fidelity Mutual Life Association. The policy named Carrie Pitzel, Ben's wife, as a beneficiary. They would then stage Benjamin's death, which would allow them to collect the insurance money and split the profits. So Ben and his wife would get some of it, and then Holmes would get the other part of it. So like they were all three of them in on it together.
Yeah.
So they're like, we'll fake Ben's death. His wife will get the insurance money. We'll split the insurance 3 ways or 50-50, whatever. And then Ben and his wife will go one way, and then H.H. Holmes will go another, $5,000 richer.
Yeah.
So the plan involved faking Ben's death by using a substitute corpse, like we talked about him doing in medical school. So Holmes would arrange the death to appear as an accident, like a laboratory explosion or something along those lines, which would make identification difficult. Pitzel agreed to participate and relocate after the scam while Holmes handled all of the details.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna let the train go by.
There it is.
Choo-choo. Just in time for the last episode.
Yeah.
Choo-choo. So, however, instead of faking Benjamin's death, Holmes decided to murder him for real.
He's just like, that's not good enough.
He was like, this is going to simplify things. Like, he's going to simplify the plan and ensure that he could keep the entire payout. So now he's going to kill Ben.
Fuck
now
his
he's
wife,
not going to split anything. Yeah.
Oh.
So in September of 84, in a rented house in Philadelphia, Holmes knocked Benjamin unconscious, likely chloroform, because he liked to use chloroform a lot. He then set Ben's body on fire, staged the scene to look like an accidental chemical explosion in Benjamin's patent office, and then later the body was discovered. The authorities accepted it as an accident. Holmes identified the body as Benjamin's using false testimony, and he manipulated some of the evidence. He then collected the $10,000 insurance payout, but instead of sharing it with Carrie, Ben's wife, he devised a new plan to eliminate the entire Pitzel family.
How it was in her name?
I
She was the
don't know.
beneficiary.
I was
Okay.
trying to look into that. I was trying to figure out how
He must have had it changed to his name.
He must have. He must have had him changed as a beneficiary.
Yeah, I think that's maybe what happened because
Yeah.
he wouldn't be able to collect on him.
Collect it if it was in her. Yeah. He must have somehow managed to change the beneficiary to himself rather than Ben's wife. Because he collects the $10,000, but instead of sharing it with Carrie, he devises a new plan to eliminate the entire family so that he can just keep the whole $10K. So, after the murder, Holmes convinced Carrie to allow 3 of her children, Alice, Nellie, and Howard, to accompany him under the pretense of reuniting them with their father. So Carrie doesn't know that Benjamin's death was real because she's thinking the plan is to get a body, fake his death. He's going to go into hiding, and then Holmes will relocate the whole family.
Devious.
Yeah. So she doesn't know that the body that was found in the office was actually Ben's body. She thinks Ben is safe and relocated and hiding somewhere.
Bro.
Yeah.
Right? So she still fully trusts Holmes here.
Yeah.
Fuck.
And she lured her kids there too.
Yep. So Holmes says, "Hey, why don't I take your kids? I know where Ben is. I know where their dad is. I'll take the kids. I'll relocate them there. You follow behind when you can. Like, you don't want to just leave the state right away after the death. That's going to look weird, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'll take the kids. I'll bring them to their dad, and then you follow when it's safe."
He just takes her kids.
So Holmes takes the kids on like this crazy cyclical roundabout.
I need to go get some popcorn for this because this is a lot. Like, what the
I
fuck is
know.
about to happen?
This is like
Nothing
a
good.
soap opera. This is like the soap opera part of the episode. So Holmes takes these 3 kids and he goes on basically like this wild goose chase across the country. Like, he goes and like bounces around.
Yeah. And she's like, "Where the fuck are my kids?"
He stays in multiple places in US and Canada. He like hops like the border.
Yeah.
And so he's taking them everywhere, staying in different hotels to evade detection. Eventually, he separates the children and sends misleading letters to their mother to keep her unaware of their whereabouts.
Yeah.
So, eventually, Holmes murders Howard, who was the youngest child, in Indianapolis, reportedly by poisoning him and then burning his body. He then leaves Howard's body in Indianapolis and proceeds along with Alice and Nellie. Later, he kills Alice and Nellie in Toronto by suffocating them in a trunk and burying their bodies in the basement of a rental property. So he has now killed all 3 children.
And she doesn't know.
However, this house of cards needs to crumble sometime, right? There's a lot of stuff going on. So Holmes was finally arrested in November of 1894 in Boston for a completely unrelated charge of horse theft in Texas. So
all these other crimes and horse theft is what got him, huh?
This really feels like the 1890s version of a killer getting caught because like they had a brake light out or they ran a stop sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what my head was. I was like, it's always the smallest shit that gets you.
So it was a charge of horse theft from when he was in Texas that had followed him. Yeah, it was identified. He was arrested for horse theft in November of 1894. While he was arrested, authorities began investigating his role in Benjamin's death after inconsistencies in the story started to come out. So they started being like, not quite right here. So they started looking into Benjamin's death. So that month, November, investigators started following Holmes's trail, like as he was going around the country with the kids. And so they started kind of retracing his steps, and they managed to find and search a house that he had rented under an alias. That was hard to say. Don't know why I struggled there. In that house, they found the decomposing bodies of Alice and Nellie.
That's sad.
So they found their bodies in a shallow grave in the basement, and evidence suggested that the girls had been suffocated inside of a trunk. And quicklime had been used in an attempt to prevent decomposition. A month later, investigators, as they continued to retrace the steps, managed to uncover Howard's remains in the chimney of another rental property that was used by Holmes. Holmes had killed Howard earlier, reportedly poisoning and burning his body to dispose of the evidence. And so while investigating this Pitzel case, investigators began uncovering his involvement in a series of mysterious disappearances and deaths connected to his murder castle in Chicago. They were like, how weird. This
Oh.
guy who's murdered Ben and 3 young children, there were also people who weirdly disappeared around him when he was living in
Mhm.
Chicago. Maybe we should look into that a little bit.
Yeah,
That
maybe you
seems a little
should.
weird. At this point, however, this is like June, July, but at this point, H.H. Holmes is still denying his involvement in the murders. Like, he's still like, I had
Yeah.
nothing to do with this. No, thank you.
Mm.
And so in July of 1895, the murder castle was thoroughly investigated and searched. They were in
Didn't
there
it burn
combing through.
down?
Yeah, so they're still combing through like
Oh.
not, it didn't like burn down to like fully ash, but there was a fire that destroyed it. So there's still like bones there. There's still like
Oh,
places
yeah.
they can go through, but there's also plenty of debris. There's the basement, everything. So they start fully investigating this murder castle. And eventually, the building was found to contain dissected body parts, bone
Mm.
fragments, and
Mm.
multiple torture devices. And they said this weird. This isn't something that you see in a normal hotel.
Yeah.
We think there was something going on here.
Yeah.
And so finally, under pressure, Holmes started to admit to some of his crimes in 1895. He claimed, like I said earlier, he claimed to have killed 27 people, but that number is a little bit wishy-washy. Investigators are
Yeah.
kind of skeptical of that number, since many of his alleged victims, like people that he said he killed, were either have never been accounted for at all, they can't find any record of, or there were some people that he admitted to murdering that then were later found alive. So there is
Oh,
some like
I
reason to be
see.
skeptical there, but he definitely murdered people. Like just
Yeah.
whether then just it's just how many, that's really up for debate. Holmes often offered conflicting accounts of his murders, sometimes exaggerating some cases or downplaying his involvement in others. Nothing was really clear, you know. And so by January of 1896, Holmes finally gave a more detailed confession to the murder of Benjamin. He walked through the
Mm.
entire insurance scam and what that looked like. He claimed that he killed Benjamin by chloroforming him,
Yeah.
and that he then subsequently murdered the 3 children while traveling with them. He also gave vivid details about the crimes he had committed in Chicago and some other
Did he collect
places.
money for the kids? Is that why? Or he just
Maybe
doesn't like
he might.
children?
I don't know. I couldn't figure out what his end game was there.
I don't know.
I don't know if he was like getting money like to care for the kids
Why would he
from
offer to keep
there.
them
Like
and then kill them?
yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the point. I think the point was to try and like eliminate the entire family so
Oh,
that there'd be
that's what it
no.
was. I think I thought it was something to do with like someone inheriting money and he had to get rid
Yeah,
of the kids or
I
something
think
like
that's what
that.
it ended up being. Like that they had to get rid of the
Yeah.
entire family
He
so
had to get
that
rid of the kids so that he could inherit the money.
so
I
that it could
think.
come to him
I think that's what
like
happened.
and look legal. Yeah.
That sounds yeah.
So in October of 1895, Holmes is tried for his crimes and he's convicted for the murder of Benjamin Pitzel. And on May 7th, 1896, Holmes was hanged at the Moyamensing prison in Philadelphia. I had to take a second and
Yeah.
sound that out. I was like, that's something. So his final words were, quote, "I was born with the devil in me. I could not help the fact that I was a murderer, no more than a poet can help the inspiration to sing."
Okay.
Sure, I guess.
I
He was like,
guess.
I know, I was born a murderer. I couldn't help it. I had no control.
I
I don't know. It's
believe
just
it.
who I am.
It's just who I
I
am.
was born this way, baby.
Oh my god. And he came from a relatively normal family.
Insert Lady Gaga here.
And yeah. Anywho. What a piece of shit.
Yeah. Well, it's fine because his execution was slow. It did not go
good.
well. His body reportedly after being hanged was reportedly twitching for over 15 minutes before pronounced dead. So it took him a long time. His neck didn't break. It took him a long time to suffocate. He requested to be buried in a cement-filled coffin in order to prevent his own body from being dissected.
Oh.
So
He's just like,
interesting that he did all of that to everyone else, and he was like, "Y'all can't do that to me. I want to
yep.
be buried in a cement-filled."
Yeah.
And so he was. Coffin was filled with cement, and he was buried in Pennsylvania.
There was a documentary that I saw about that dude. This was like, he was my great 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 grandfather, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of speculation if he conned his way out of being hanged and buried in the cement or something. Like that's they like dug up his
So
body.
there's a documentary. It's the whole thing of this guy who believes that H.H. Holmes is his great grandfather, and so he's searching for H.H. Holmes. He's trying to prove this.
Yeah.
And so they get to where he was buried, and there's this entire theory where Holmes managed to like trick himself out of getting executed. So he got someone else executed in his place.
Yeah.
He
By like
escaped prison.
bribing
Exactly. He like
the
bribed
guards or
someone.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the person who was hanged was not actually H.H. Holmes. And so the person who was buried in cement was not actually that same guy. And so he took off, and then there was a mysterious man, buried in cement.
Yeah.
And so I think I haven't watched the documentary. I've like listened to recaps of it.
did.
They exhumed him, didn't they?
They exhumed
and DNA
him,
tested.
and the body was the same height as what it was H.H. Holmes. Like they were able to determine
it was.
like based on the height. I don't know if it was like dental records, but it wasn't some elaborate hoax. Like his final con and he cheated death, it was him. So they did exhume the body and they did analyze it.
Yeah. And so they confirm, or they've stated that with as much certainty as they can have, that body is H.H. Holmes. He did not escape execution that day. And so that is the story of H.H. Holmes, but that is not where we're going to end, because there are some interesting tidbits about this case that we need to go over next.
Yes.
Like the possible connection between H.H. Holmes and Jack the Ripper.
Ripper.
There is a theory. It's a really fun theory, but there is a theory that H.H. Holmes and Jack the Ripper were actually the same person. Yes. So the idea of Holmes being Jack the Ripper first emerged after his arrest in 1894, because some people suggest that Holmes may have visited London during the period of the Ripper killings in 1888, either during his medical training or while conducting some sort of fraudulent activities over there. Like maybe he's over there doing some sort of, scheme. So there are some key elements to this Holmes Ripper theory. They're the theories that suggest that he traveled to England, that he may have visited London during the same period. And so there's some overlap there, either during, like I said, his medical training. And one of the theories of Jack the Ripper is that Jack had medical training.
Yep.
So thinking that. There's not necessarily solid proof to say that he was in London during that time, but records are not always the most clear.
There's boat records that show the name H. Holmes.
Yes.
That's another theory.
There is a boat record that says like H. Holmes on the manifest. And so that's kind of the piece of evidence that like most people really do.
Yeah.
That like maybe that means that was him. And that's the same H. Holmes, right?
Because his activity in America ceased while Jack the Ripper was doing this thing over there.
Yeah,
and like that's weird.
His main activity didn't really pick up, like his murder activity didn't really pick up until like 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, So the Jack the Ripper killings happened before all of this, really, before like the main murders. So that is
a theory.
That timing overlap. Yeah.
We don't know.
The Ripper killings involved a brutal style of murder with, like, you covered the story. Throats were slashed and organs were removed, whereas
a lot of hate towards women.
Yeah, really crazy, like very, very aggressive. Holmes also targeted primarily women, although he didn't target like sex workers. So that is a key difference. But Holmes' crimes at the murder castle also involved dismemberment and surgical experimentation, which led some speculation to the connection, because they were both horrifying, just in kind of different ways. Holmes was known to dissect bodies, and he had a thorough understanding of human anatomy, which is
Mm-hmm.
another thing that a lot of people say that Jack the Ripper must have had some sort of knowledge of anatomy in the way that he
Mm-hmm.
dissected those women's bodies. He had to have known at least
Something. Yeah.
something there. So it's clear that they both Jack the Ripper and Holmes had some sort of thorough understanding of human anatomy, which explains the similarities in how both Ripper and Holmes managed to dispose of their victims. There's also that medical connection, like I said. Holmes, as a medical professional, would have had the skills necessary for the surgical precision that was evident in the Ripper killings.
Mm-hmm.
He was known to have dissected cadavers and used his medical knowledge to commit crimes and dispose of his bodies in the US. And so they're thinking maybe he used that same knowledge in the Jack the Ripper killings, and that's why
Mm-hmm.
there's maybe the same person. He was also really easily able to deceive and manipulate people, including the wives of his victims.
Yeah. I think another point that was made that I remember is that, I mean, we talked about the style of men back then,
Mhm.
bowler hat, big
Yeah.
bushy mustache, and H.H. Holmes fit the description of Jack the Ripper.
True.
I mean,
Yeah.
probably a lot of men did, but they try to do like the composite sketch side by side with like H.H. Holmes, and they look kind of similar. So that was some more evidence. Like, I don't know if they did. I'm sure they did handwriting analysis too, and so I don't remember what came of that. Probably nothing. The handwriting styles of allegedly Jack the Ripper and H.H. Holmes may have been
Right.
different. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's very similar. They do look very similar.
mhm.
I mean, granted, that's also just the fashion of the time, but
Yeah.
there's some similarities between the composite sketch of Jack the Ripper and
Mhm.
what H.H. Holmes looked like.
But it's
So,
not definitive proof.
not definitive proof.
Mm-mm.
They also say that like Holmes was able to deceive and manipulate people, and Jack the Ripper was able to operate in secrecy, and like there's that connection. That's a little wishy washy, but like they're saying like
Mhm.
equal deceptiveness, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's nothing to go on.
Yeah. Now, it is a fun theory. They haven't no one has been able to find direct evidence linking Holmes and Jack the Ripper. There were no witnesses that place him at the crime scenes in Whitechapel.
No.
Holmes was living in US during the majority of the Ripper killings in
Mhm.
1888. There are theories that he could have been in London, like that ship manifest, but that's a very like there's nothing H Holmes that could be,
It's
it's not necessarily like
probably
that's an
common name.
uncommon name. So who knows there. The MOs were also different. Holmes was more methodical and less kind of messy with his murders.
Mhm.
He spent time with them. He had a whole building for them. His crimes were often driven by fraud and to get money. Whereas Jack the Ripper, they were all street based.
Mhm.
They were all publicly done. They were quick. They were messy. They
Yeah.
involved sex workers, and they really had no financial or fraudulent motivation. It was really just hate against women. It was like
Mhm.
the motive was to kill and maim and humiliate women.
Yeah. While it's an interesting theory, I just why would he go there just to do that? And then I
Right.
don't know, unless he was on there on business
Unless
and
that's where that's where his murders would have started. Like his
yeah.
first murders or Jack the that seems like a very intense way to start your crime, and then to end with
Yeah.
like a more controlled building a whole murder castle.
Yeah.
So there's no direct evidence, but it is a really, really fun theory
It
to look
is.
into. There's interesting connections, and you'll never really know, but like,
We won't
maybe,
know.
maybe not. And so I'm gonna end here. So do H.H. Holmes's victims still haunt Chicago? Many people will say
Oh,
that they
yes.
do. Yes. So the murder hotel is obviously no longer standing. After the fire, it was demolished and other buildings have been built there and stuff.
Isn't it like on federal land or it's
Yes.
under like a post office or something?
Yes.
So they can't do any they can't go on the property and like excavate
Right.
or um do what is it? Uh what is it? The X-ray ground X-ray. What is it? Ground penetrating
Ground
radar,
penetrating
like
radar.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
They
They
can't
can't
do
do the
that.
ground penetrating radar. Yeah, so
To see
the
if there's
plot
more
of
bodies down
land
there.
where the murder castle used to stand
hmm
is believed to be haunted by his victims. Today, a post office stands on that piece of land.
Yeah.
So
So
that's interesting. But several USPS employees attest to strange goings-ons in the building, specifically in the basement, which many believe share a foundational wall with the original castle.
mm,
Employees report hearing sounds or seeing shadowy figures. There have been reports of faint cries and screams associated with the area,
that's creepy.
particularly near the basement. Like this full on
Ugh.
hearing screams. No, thank you. No, ma'am. I will.
Mm-hmm.
No. Mm-mm.
Nope.
And of course, visitors and workers at the post office have occasionally reported sudden temperature drops, feelings of unease, and unexplained noises. One employee did share a particularly chilling story about, while they were working, they heard a sound in the basement. And so she poked her head around the corner to see if her colleague was there. Like, heard something weird going on in the basement, kind of like looked around the corner, was like, "Hey, Jane, like, what you doing? You down here? Like, you need help?"
Mm.
But there was no answer. There was no one there. And she saw
Ooh.
nothing down the hallway but a row of chairs lined up against the wall. And then a minute later, when she returned to the hallway, the chairs had all been stacked up on top of each other.
Nope. No thanks. Okay, bye. I quit.
I'm done.
I'm done.
This is my letter of resignation,
Nope.
effective immediately.
A
Goodbye.
lot of angry spirits here.
No, thank you. Other employees have seen apparitions of a young woman in the building or on the grassy property where the castle once stood. And there have been numerous reports of the sound of a woman singing or humming various parts of the current USPS building.
Nope.
And so that is the story of H.H. Holmes.
What a fabulous human being. He was
something.
He was something.
But,
his whole life was just devoted to being a con, and he did not
yeah.
care who he hurt just to get
Nope.
the money.
No, he didn't care at all.
Mm-mm.
So that's the story that we're gonna end on for this podcast for the time being.
We did a full circle. I'm happy we got through that. It's a lot.
Yeah.
The story of H.H. Holmes and Jack the Ripper are both very fascinating stories.
Yeah, and I think this is a solid one too. Just ties everything together really
I will
nicely.
stop my day and watch any documentary on either one of these people.
Interesting.
It is. I wish we had DNA evidence to figure out who Jack the Ripper was. That story was fascinating, how they just fucked it up.
Yeah.
Or kept something. I don't know. Like, we'll never know who Jack the Ripper was. Fascinating to think that maybe it was H.H. Holmes. He never admitted to it.
No, he never did.
I kind of don't think it was
Holmes
him.
himself never said anything about being connected to Jack the Ripper. That was something that came
I don't
in
think
separate.
he was.
I don't think so either.
Conspiracy theorists like to think that he was.
It's fun to think about. I don't think it's true, but I really
Would you own up to that though?
It.
I feel like I would on my deathbed.
I
like, any final words? I'm Jack the Ripper.
I feel like Holmes.
I mean, if you just admitted to like killing 27 people, why wouldn't you just pick? Oh, and also like I'm international bitches.
I feel like Holmes would have absolutely taken that notoriety. Like he would have wanted that.
Yeah.
So I think he would have been like, "Oh, by the way, I'm Jack the Ripper, bitches. Bye."
Exactly. I think he would have admitted to it.
Jumped off of the hanging podium. Like those would have been his last words.
Yeah.
Swan dive. Like
I feel like my ego would admit to it just so I could have that notoriety.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like
what kind of book deal can I get if I admit to
he would have
or
said
whatever,
just for the fame. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think they were one and the same, but it is fun to think about. Like, ooh, and H. Holmes went over to England at the same time. The documentary on Netflix, I think it's on Netflix, with that guy who's trying to figure out his grandfather. It is
I think
interesting.
Yeah.
Is it Amazon? I don't know.
I think so.
If it's free and you can watch it, I recommend watching it. It is a fun series to watch. Yeah. And they keep it very suspenseful because they're like, is his body really in there? Because I think it was like 2 concrete barriers before his grave. So they thought he wasn't even in there.
Yeah.
at first.
Yeah.
And then eventually they broke through another wall. Spoiler alert. For those who haven't seen it. My bad. But anyway, it's a great watch. You should watch it.
Go watch it, but I'm going to tell you what
I'm gonna
happens.
tell you what happened. It's not his grandfather. Oh, it's inconclusive. Let's say that.
Inconclusive, but they do believe that the body in there is H.H. Holmes.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a good story.
I thought this was a great one to end on. It has the true crime elements. It has that
Yeah.
mystery element. It has the ghost
does.
element. You know, it
Yes.
ties into other episodes we've done. It's a great, just interesting, twisty case. There's
It's
turns.
very
There's like that
twisted.
soap opera side of things with the whole insurance fraud with the kids and the faking the death,
He
but not
was a
faking the death.
horrible
Yeah.
human being.
Yeah. So
The story's fascinating though.
it's a great case. I had a really fun time digging in and doing the research for it.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good one to end on. I think it's a good full circle moment.
People can't do what he did now. There's just too much technology.
No.
And he's probably the reason why insurance is so strict, or they probably expanded their policy in contracts for certain things, like to protect themselves from fraud like this. And we can't have nice things because of people like him, because the trust factor is gone.
Yeah. But yeah, no, people absolutely could not get away with these types of murders today. There's too much. There's CCTV footage. There's DNA evidence.
That's
there's
true.
There's just
fingerprints.
cameras
There's
everywhere.
no way anyone could
DNA,
ever get away with these types of crimes.
They'd have to get really creative with AI technology and just evolve with the times.
Right.
I can't even comprehend how they can do it now, but I'm sure they'll figure it out.
I think that's one of the things that make modern serial killers more scary to me than like older serial killers, because like those older serial killers couldn't do it in today.
He wasn't a genius.
Dumb. Yeah, they weren't geniuses. Like same thing happens with Ted Bundy. Like he was smart, but like he wouldn't have gotten away with that today. Same thing happens with BTK. BTK was not smart. He was a fucking idiot. Like, and he absolutely would not have gotten away with anything today. Like, there are so many ones where, like, from the 60s, from the 70s, from even the 80s, you're like, you wouldn't be able to do that anymore. Like, you're not like this monster under the bed, like elusive thing. Like, you are an idiot who doesn't know what they're doing and thinks that they're better than people, and you're not. Whereas, like, I think more modern day serial killers, like Israel Keys, that's what gets me, because like they are operating. So like some of them
wasn't
do
BTK
so well.
the one who was like, they found him with the encryption or whatever with his
so
information.
BTK,
what fucking idiot.
That's probably one case I wish I had covered, because like it just it makes me laugh. It makes me laugh so hard because he disappeared for so long and he got away with it. They didn't know who the fuck he was. And then in the early 2000s, he just like resurfaced and started sending these notes to the police, like antagonizing them. Like, you'll never know who I am. Like, you'll never catch me. Like, leaving these little like mutilated Barbie dolls and shit, like in cereal boxes or whatever. There was like a cereal box because he's a serial killer. Get it? Ha ha ha. He thought he was being real funny and clever with that. And so he had these, like, he was taunting the police, like, you'll never find me. And they're like, give us proof that you're actually BTK. He's like, well, I have files I could provide, but I could give it to you on a floppy disk, but could you track me with a floppy? Would you be able to find out who I am if I gave you a floppy disk with files? And they were like, no, we could never. There's no way. Floppy disks are, like, first of all, hating myself with floppy disks, but floppy disks
were around when I was a kid, but barely.
Like, untraceable. We could never figure out who you are from that. And so he did. He like had a bunch of files that he loaded onto a floppy disk and like gave to the police. But he saved them from his work computer. So when they went to look at like the properties of the files, it literally had his name, like it had like D.Ryder at like this Methodist church on Main Street.com. Like,
idiot.
And so they just like walked up to them and they were like, hey.
For a fun fact for anyone who's born in the 2000s, that's what your fucking save button on Word is. It's a floppy disk, if you didn't know.
Like, I remember BTK being caught.
I don't.
Because it happened in the early 2000s. It happened in 2005. Dennis Rader was caught in 2005. I was literally at my grandma's house watching the news. I have the memory of that.
Yeah. It makes me think about that other woman. Like, you remember that crazy ass story of that man who was on dates, and like he went on a date with a woman and then she went missing, and then she was the stalker.
Yeah,
You remember that
yeah.
one?
Yes, the crazy stalker case.
It's just, this ain't real. Like, that story is, if you haven't
So
heard that
many
story, go back
turns,
and listen to
yeah.
it. It's so fucking
Twists and
crazy. And it's
turnies.
also on Netflix. But
Yeah.
that woman who committed all the crime and murdered that other lady, she was creating false emails under like people's names. And like, how do you think that no one's gonna she thought she was so smart doing that, and maybe she would have been, but like they connected all the emails to her.
Exactly. And
like,
you have
I'm gonna
IP
make an
addresses
email
that you
like,
can trace.
I
Like,
am
not much.
Ashley, and then I'm gonna confess to the murder of so and so. Like, she thought she was so smart for that, and she thought the
Yeah.
police were so fucking stupid, and it just makes me think of that. And just
And
like,
meanwhile, they're like, the emails were coming from inside your house.
idiot.
It's like
I
the
don't
calls going
know.
from
I've
inside
never
the
been
house.
in her car. We have your thumbprint.
Yeah.
I've never been in her car. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's
so
why
it's
I
just
think, like I said, some of these older serial killer cases are just more
Yeah.
interesting to me, and they don't really scare me because I know that like they couldn't happen today. Some of the
No.
more modern ones that are that like where they're smarter and they're like able to get around modern day, like
Yeah.
DNA testing and fingerprints, and like they're really careful. Those ones tend to scare me more.
Mhm.
But if I came across BTK on the street, I'd be like, "What's up, dummy?"
Yeah. Idiot.
Idiot. You want a floppy disk?
Yeah, he just
Ugh.
wasn't bright. But anywho, so it was
But
a good story to cover with
Yeah.
H.H. Holmes. And I'm happy we got to talk about it today.
All right, well, thank you for listening. We have had so much fun sharing these spine-chilling stories with you. If you want more information on today's subject, all of our sources are posted in the episode description notes.
While we'll be taking a hiatus from releasing new episodes in 2025, our backlog of episodes will remain available wherever you listen to podcasts.
We'll post announcements regarding any possible future episodes on our Instagram at insomniacs.pod, so be sure to follow us there.
Just know that we appreciate you all. Thank you so much for listening. Sweet dreams. Wait.
I was
Stay safe.
I was gonna do what did we learn today? We still do like this. So
Oh, I forgot.
Char's like, yo, I'm fucking done. Like,
Peace. So Char, what did we learn today?
I don't know if I learned anything new because I'm very enthralled by this story. So I'm happy we covered it. There's probably some details that I kind of was remembering as we were going, but the story is very fascinating.
Was there
I
anything
didn't
we
learn
didn't
anything
cover
new.
that you knew about it that I didn't put in the episode?
So I didn't really know about like the Ferris wheel. That was interesting.
That was fun.
Other than that, no, I think the story's pretty well known.
Same.
I've seen a million documentaries on this motherfucker.
Yeah.
So there's nothing nothing new that I learned, or anything that I feel like if I feel like you left something out, I spoke up and talked about it anyway. And so it's just a very interesting person. And it's just, he's the definition of just evil.
Agreed.
Evil.
And well, Sean, since you're being recorded, what was your favorite part of the story? Because this is new for you.
Yeah, no, this one is new for me. I haven't actually done a lot of research on this.
What?
So
Really?
Yeah, and everything true crime I know through Ashley.
That's true.
Everything I know is
there
through
was
Ashley.
a few times where Sean's jaw dropped, like, what?
No, the whole low key kidnapping. Well, it is kidnapping, right? Like that's pretty crazy. So yeah, probably not low key, but the whole kidnapping thing, crazy.
Yeah.
And all that's pretty interesting. I keep going back to that hotel, and what is that show on Hulu? Where the one that Lady Gaga was in. I keep getting flashbacks to that
American Horror
that
Story.
creepy hotel. American Horror Story, yeah, and just that hotel setup, and all I think about is that.
If they did a season based off of this. They probably did. I know they did a season based off of Madame LaLaurie, which I covered in October. But I wonder if I never watched the show, so
I haven't either.
Yeah, they have a creepy hotel one.
I wonder.
So just kind of
they probably have it loosely based off of this.
It's the one that Lady Gaga's in. So if you guys haven't watched that season, I can't remember.
Watch it.
It's awesome because it was pretty cool. I was here for that. But yeah, I don't know. The whole thing's really interesting. But yeah, the whole like kidnapping kid thing
The kids
is crazy.
Yeah.
And the fact that like she's like, oh no, my husband's dead. And like in the back of her head, like she thinks that he really isn't. She's just playing
But he
along.
really
Like,
is.
God, that's such a mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's such a mind
Yeah.
fuck. That's crazy.
I'm pretty sure he kidnapped them. I'm pretty sure.
I think.
It had to do with something about so that the kids
Yeah,
would
I mean that
inherit
would
the
make
money.
sense, right? Because like,
Yeah.
why would you willingly do
kids?
that?
And
Right.
Yeah,
I think he was trying to inherit the
full
money
10K.
instead of the
Yeah, that
children
makes sense.
inheriting something. I can't remember. And it would be good to
Yeah.
look back and kind of like watch that episode and look into that more. I'm pretty sure. But
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole insurance thing with Ben and the kids and his wife
It didn't mean anything
like
to
are
him.
soap opera. Like it feels like something out of a soap opera.
He was an opportunist. Any way he could make money off of someone else's misery, and
he
did not care if you died so he could get money. He was just so in the hole.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, I'm glad that you joined us for this one, Sean.
Yeah.
We didn't know he was going to be a part of it, but we're happy to have you
Decided
here.
not to send you the producer link and to send you a regular guest link, and now you're here.
So now I'm here. Now I'm part of the podcast. The final episode.
The one and only episode.
Yeah, the one and only episode.
Wonderful.
All right, guys. Well, stay spooky.
Stay safe.
And
sweet dreams.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Welcome to Insomniacs, the podcast where we talk about all things true crime, supernatural, and mysterious. I'm Shar.
And I'm Ashley, and these are I forgot what we said.